What's going on, guys? Kyger here. I get asked all the time what fairies should I use for my class. I'm going to walk you through the best fairy combinations for every element. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so I have this posted on my Discord. Go to my resources channel and just type in fairy combos. This list will come up. These are all 2 fairy combinations that either their actives work together to do something very powerful, or their passives synergize with each other. Now these will be able to be used with, for the most part, any class, but I will notate anything in particular for a class as I talk about them. So starting right here with Holy, this is probably my favorite PvP Holy combination. Now this is Licorice and Millum, Millum being from the Slime collab, and the idea here is Licorice, a lot of people play around Licorice. Licorice, when you click the button, she comes out, picks a target, and then disappears, and then comes up at that target, does a bunch of damage, and stuns them for a while. The issue being, once they see her come out of the ground and pick a target, they can dodge or whatnot to make themselves immune to when that stun actually hits. What happens here with Millum is also kind of slow. But the moment you click the button, she starts doing the wind-up for the ability. But right when you hit the button, they can't move. So you hit the button, they can't move, and then by the time that's over, you hit both of these buttons at the exact same time. By the time they're able to move from Millum, they're already stunned from Licorice. And when Millum will hit at the same time that Licorice comes up, both of them dealing damage. And what's really nice is Millum also has a side effect of increasing damage from other fairies, so it'll also increase the damage that Licorice is doing. This is one of my very favorite PvP combos. Now another really good PvP combo right here is the new Orchid and Hibiscus. Now, this is a very defensive grouping. It'll be best with something like Lancer, Gladiator, things like that. You can even make use some variations of Ninja or even Priest. And what's happening here is Hibiscus only deals damage around you if it heals you. And so this will allow you to heal up to a certain point, but what's a little annoying is once you're at full HP, it's not really doing anything, right? That's where Butterfly Orchid comes in. Butterfly Orchid also gives you immunity to most crowd control, knockout, knockback, and also stops them from moving for a very short amount of time for whoever's in the circle when she lands. But she also takes some of your HP to make a shield, and then Hibiscus comes through and heals you back to max. So these two work really good in tandem to actually become a damage force. They're both dealing good AoE damage, and they both can do it on top of each other. You hit Hibiscus will do damage to a target, but also damage around you. And then Butterfly Orchid does damage to a location. So if you're standing on that location, damage, 3 sources of damage happening at the same time, as well as you're at full HP, you have a massive shield. It's really, really strong. Primarily for PvP. If you don't have anything else, may as well use it for PvE. But PvE, this is the golden. There is no better PvE combination if you're playing Holy than these two right here. What happens here is Twin Lotus increases your damage to monsters, and then Gypsophilia gives you stat bonuses as well as deals damage over time to a certain area. Once you max her out, she's also going to give you cooldown, which is obviously more skills, more damage. They are just a beautiful, beautiful couple. Now, a pretty good PvP combo. I would recommend the other two more than this one, but this one is actually pretty powerful for certain situations. If you're playing against a player that you know knows how to dodge properly, this is a great combo to bring. And what happens here is Mistletoe puts down a circle on the area. And generally most people, when they're stuck in an area, they're going to dodge out of it, right? Use a dodge, get out. But Mistletoe has a clause on her barrier that even if they are invulnerable, dodge, they still get stunned on the wall. And what's very interesting is Laurel has the exact size of their ability of that circle. And the biggest issue with Laurel is hitting with the skill. It's a pretty quick skill, but it's easy to know that it's coming. And what happens is you put down Mistletoe, then you lay down Laurel, and then Laurel is guaranteed to hit because its circle is the same size as the cage itself. So this is a pretty good combo to make sure you're landing hits. Going on to Fire, I have two major teams to talk to you about Fire. One for PvE and one for PvP. So this one right here is the PvE combo. What happens here is you use Winter Cherry to give anything you're fighting against, any monster you're fighting against, weakness to fire, and Chestnut Rose gives whatever's weak to fire an additional weakness to fire, effectively. Instead of them taking whatever their weakness to fire is, they take more damage. This is a beautiful 1-2 punch. In a lot of guild bosses, it's a little bit different now that we have those Flower Fairy seasons, but during the off seasons, every day is Fire Weakness Day. If your guild lines these two up in a proper rotation, then it's always weak to fire, then it's always taking additional damage to fire. You can ignore whatever element is that day. As long as everyone uses these two and does it in a proper order, they're always going to do very, very well. And here's the PvP duo. We have Hydreiga of Flames and Anathria. Now, Hydreiga of Flames is a very quick ability. It has a big AoE, and what happens here is it does increase your defense. That's not really what you're worried about here. It can matter if you're playing Berserker or Mechanician, that can give you some bonuses. But what you're mainly trying to do here is it puts a slow on them. It also disables their dodge, and if you max her out, she will also heal you for 20% of damage done. Now, what is happening here is you're disabling their dodge, and then Anathria comes in. And what happens with Anathria, she's pretty slow, but during that time that their dodge is disabled, she's going to hit. And when she hits, if they're under 40% HP, let me make sure. If they're under 40% HP, she does 80% more damage and puts anti-heal on them, making them unable to heal. So a great 1-2 combo. Hydreiga Flames hopefully puts them under 40, and then Anathria comes through and kills them. Now, there are obviously other Flower Fairies in Fire, but none of them really synergize together, which is why it isn't listed. Fire has more fairies than Water, but I only have 2 Fire combos and 3 Water combos, just because how the fairies work together. I have an offensive Water one right here. You have Lotus and Hydreiga. I get them a little mixed up because their skills are very similar. One stuns, one silences, and they time in such a way that they're either silenced or stunned, and then they're silenced or stunned, and gives you a defense buff. This is a offensive slash supporty water one, really good. Then we have our premier defensive ones right here. Ikoria on the left. Once you swap to her, she gives you you ignore knockups, knockbacks, and slows, as well as during, I believe it's during her skill. Let me double check. Yeah, if you would die, you come back to you. Instead, are reduced to 10% HP. So you get an anti-death on water. Obviously, very, very powerful. And then Gardenia scales really well with obviously the passive, giving you damage based on your HP, but also max HP, so it's harder to kill you. Primarily, these two are going together greatly because of their passives, allowing you to Ikoria makes you unable to die and gets rid of some CC effects, and Gardenia gives you damage based on your HP, which is obviously what water wants. And then their skills work pretty well together because Gardenia turns off their dodge, and Ikoria does really sneaky high damage, especially per second. So if they can't dodge and they can't be invulnerable, good to go. And then if you rank up Gardenia, they can't remove those effects, so they stack really well together, right? And then last is one you probably never thought about, and that's Blue Rose and Viola. And what's happening here is obviously Blue Rose gives you more damage, but her main thing is her skill actually does a crap ton of damage, but has a hard time hitting. Viola, her basic attack slows, as well as her active skill slows and knocks up. But they have relatively the same size of skill, so Viola does the slow and then a knock up, and by the time the knock up happens, then Blue Rose comes through and does the damage, which is a lot of damage. Going on to wind, we have 3 wind, and then we have 3 earth. So first is Edelweiss and Almond Blossom. These two are primarily together based on their passives. Edelweiss giving you a bunch of crit immunity, and Almond Blossom getting rid of debuffs that are put onto you. These are two very, very powerful anti-debuff ones. So Edelweiss takes care of the crits coming your way, and Almond Blossom deals with debuffs that land on you. As far as their actual abilities, is actually pretty funny because Edelweiss gives you a chance to, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah, it gives you debuff mastery, does damage, hallucinates them. When they get buffs, they take damage. So you're stopping debuffs from coming your way, and you're stopping buffs from coming their way. And then Almond Blossom is great to give you that the passive dodge, and every time you trigger the passive dodge, it goes down by a bit. Very, very powerful units. They are both kind of defensive, making sure they can't have attack up or whatnot when they're coming your way, and then making sure you can't be slowed or whatnot going the other direction. Now, this is one of my favorites right here by an offense perspective. Camellia and Tranquil Bloom Flower. And what's happening here is Camellia takes a little bit of how their two abilities line up is you throw Camellia, and then Camellia knocks up, and by the time that knock up happens, then Almond Balloon Flower, I just talked about her. Tranquil Balloon Flower happens, does a bunch of damage, and then you have her passive reducing the cooldowns of your skills. You can decide how you want to do that based on your class. If you're doing something like marksman, you want to always make sure you're doing reducing never miss, so you can have 100% uptime with never miss. And then these two are a PvE combo. What's happening here is Balloon Flower pulls them in, defense down, and then Dandelion comes through and does a bunch of damage over time. It's a pretty easy combo, but exactly what you want. This works together very, very similarly to how these two work together. Going down to Earth, this one is very interesting. This is a PvE combo. What's happening here is Marigold does it slow, but you're not too worried about that. And then also increases the damage they receive from Earth. And then over here, I get her name. I have too many names in my head. I apologize. Carnation. What Incarnation? She does AoE damage over time, as well as does one pull-in. And what's happening here is you're increasing the damage they receive from Earth, and then Carnation does a bunch of damage over time. So it's a great PvE combo, and especially if you have a high enough Echo, if you have at least level 5, you can tick the passive effect that also does more damage over time as well. Now, these two can be PvE or PvP. They also work together really well both ways. And what's happening here is Tulip increases your damage when you swap to her, but also she does a silence. If you, depending on how much HP each player has, but when you swap to this combo, she increases your damage. Can also increase damage more for a set amount of time, as well as silences the enemy. And then Daisy doesn't sound like she really works with her, but what happens here is Tulip is increasing your damage, which also increases the fairy damage, which increases the slime reflect damage. So this is better in PvE. Because you can have the taunt work a certain way, but in PvP, the slime reflect damage is burn damage, so it ignores defense. So increase and then reflect works pretty well. Earth is kind of in a weird spot right now where they don't have a lot of combos, but this is a pretty decent one that you can use in PvP or PvE. So if you're doing PvE, you would do these two and these two. If you're doing PvP, you would do these two and these two. And what's happening here is really funny. They both give you some defensive bonuses. Foxglove on the left gives you a shield, and on the right, Primrose gives you damage reduction. And what's also happening is Primrose lands and stuns, and during the time that they're stunned, Foxglove comes through and does the fist slam. So they just work really well together, defensively and offensively. They're one of the best pairs for Earth. Let me know what you guys think of these combos down below. As I said, if you come to my Discord, Neverland resource, and then you just type flower fairy teams or fairy combos, comes right up. Till next time, guys.